of Winning Teams, the 8 characteristics of high-performing teams, and he joins us now live. Tim, thanks so much for your time.
Pleasure, thank you.
So most team problems can be traced back to misunderstandings. Seems pretty obvious, but with communication these days, things like Slack, group messaging, is there any excuse in 2020 for misunderstanding and miscommunication?
Well, there shouldn't be any excuse, but unfortunately there is. It's that whole communication piece, it's the missing piece. Teams spend so much time and energy working on the task, whether it's the widgets that have got to be produced or the services that have got to be performed, that they forget that actually teams are all about people. And so my book is really looking at the whole notion of how we get the people dimension working for teams.
It's interesting in a situation where people are isolated working from home, and we're finding out that people are actually doing a lot better because they don't have to communicate with each other. Are we finding that these days with tech, etc., that isolation theory of actually just working on a big project yourself rather than wasting time having to explain to people what you mean, what you want, could be the way to go?
I think so, but it depends on the content of what the conversation's about. I think too often what we talk about is the actual task, which of course we have to talk about, but sometimes we don't talk about the people dimension, and so we don't give that enough concentration. So it doesn't matter what medium we actually use, it's really the nature of the content of the conversation that's critically important.
Yeah. So what are the 8 characteristics, would you say, of high-performing teams? What works well?
Well, the 8 characteristics, very, very quickly, are building trust. Obviously, you'd imagine that would be one. Sharing leadership, being agile, managing stakeholders, creating purpose, very much around improving systems in teams, managing diversity in teams, and learning continuously. And any team that actually is high performing would exhibit those characteristics as distinct from a mediocre team.
So it's when we talk about a mediocre team, what are the problems that go on there? Is it because the team isn't talking to each other, they don't like each other? There's obviously a human element in this.
Absolutely. You're spot on. They're not talking to each other. There might be 1 or 2 members of the team that are dominating the conversation when they do talk, and so others don't feel comfortable contributing, so they step back, even though they may well have something very useful to contribute to the team conversation. And it's not the team, not just in team meetings, it's also in the corridors. So it's a question of how people communicate, and informally, that can really distinguish a high-performing from a low-performing team. So it's the communication piece, certainly.
Yeah, and when it comes to technology, it is on our side, isn't it, when it comes to emails and things? We're hearing that during COVID-19, email is dead. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I hope so. I mean, I don't know about you, but I got 200 emails this morning, and I reckon only 2 or 3 of them were relevant.
Yeah.
My comment to people in teams is really get on the phone, because people are sitting at home at the moment and they're quite happy to take a phone call because they're in isolation. So I think this is a real opportunity for us to move into a more personal type of communication, because emails are asynchronous. In other words, when you send an email, you don't necessarily get an answer back straight away. And so having a conversation on email is absolutely futile.
I guess one of the things that straight away I think of when we talk about misunderstanding and miscommunication in team is the lack of leadership that those teams must be addressing to allow for that to happen. Talk to us about the role of leadership when it comes to communication.
Yeah, well, my book, Winning Teams, talks exclusively to the leader and what the team leader can do to create a culture of performance. And the leader, it's all about the leadership. Show me a team that's not performing very well, and I probably would say that show me the leader. Show me what he or she is doing or not doing. Yeah, exactly. That's where it starts and ends. And I think other people get promoted from technical positions into leadership positions They have very little understanding or awareness of the people dimension or emotional intelligence as we talk about.
You're perfectly right. I mean, when I think of a lot of teams that I know of, you have a person who is put into a leadership position not because they love to lead, but because they are the best at the technical aspect of the role. And the problem with that is quite often it's introverts who are great at the technical aspect who all of a sudden find themselves in a role that is forcing them to be extroverted, forcing them to care about other people even if they don't actually care. That gets picked up very quickly, very easily, and next thing you lose the rest of the team.
Absolutely, and that's what my book's all about, helping those technical experts actually learn a new skill set, which is ultimately about leading teams. And I think you're right, people get promoted on the basis of their technical prowess. The best engineer is not necessarily the best leader, and this is the problem that we've got. So we need to actually look at our recruitment and selection processes as well. But once people get into those positions, they've got a completely different set of responsibilities. They're one step removed from the technical. And of course, what it's all about is getting other people to do the technical. And that's a completely different skill set, as you'd be aware.
Yeah, very much so. All right, Dr. Tim Baker, really appreciate your time. Thanks so much.
Thank you.